Okay. This is number 5, public participations, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 2-minute limit. If you're on a device, raise your hand. If you are on the phone, it is star, gosh, I forgot, star 9. Star 9, I haven't said that 800 times. When I call on you, please state your name and address for the record. We have some people in the audience. If anyone in the audience has anything, please just indicate that you want to speak and I will call you up. I am not seeing anybody. All right, that gets us to number 6 then. Public hearings, we have none. 7A, reports and of the boards and committees responsible to council. Brenda, that's you.
All right, so the first blight meeting, the next blight meeting has been canceled. Sustainable CT, there's free equity training coming up. It is available to every elected official and every employee of the town of Tolland because we are a member of this program. The training is going to be on 3 Fridays in October. They are from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. In order for us to get points for equity training this year, we would have to have some people besides me take the training. It's free to the town, and what's really great about it is it specifically highlights equity and how it interacts with municipal government, you know, in small communities, basically. I found it invaluable. It can be uncomfortable at times to talk about inequities in our community, but identifying them and addressing them is the right step and the right thing to do to create a sustainable and resilient community. So I had forwarded that email that has the sustainable CT equity training in it to our town manager, Lisa Hancock, and she's welcome to forward that to you know, all of our employees and all of our elected officials. They do have a limit of 30 people to take the class because there are like breakout sessions and stuff. So it's best if you sign up early. The Tolland Green Historic Commission met. They had a discussion about fencing, which passed, and tourism. It has been, first of all, we are manning people up at the Big E. So we have people up there in our Central Region Tourism promoting Connecticut. We have started our fall preview, and locally it's been a year since we created the Tolland Tourism Facebook page. We have over 3,000 people a month interacting with that page. So that means there's 3,000 people in our community and in surrounding communities who are learning about everything that Tolland has to offer. So I think that's just absolutely awesome. There's still about 700 people who have been invited to like the page. And, you know, we have so many people in our community who are members of the page. It would be great if they each invited some of their friends and neighbors who live in adjoining communities so that we can share what's going on in our town. And I think that's it for everything I have.
Okay, you combined A and B on me, so that's good though. I got everything.
Sorry, I figured we wanted to get, you know, through everything.
That's fine, that's fine. You don't have anything else, right? That's everything for you? Okay, Kurt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I had to report was kind of the Agricultural Commission meeting last Monday. They're having a lot of discussion about bringing the farmers market back to the town green. But they are concerned with some of the wording that we had used when we revised the regulations for the town, the use of town green, specifically the parking of vehicles on the grass, which would be a hindrance for the farmers market because the folks over there park their vehicles up, set up their tents and whatnot. So that our planning director and just said he's gonna do a little more research into something that we might have to take up as a council if the Agricultural Commission feels that that's where they want to head, is that direction of bringing the farmers market back to the town green. It's something that we as a council would have to address the wording of our regulation, specifically with vehicles. And we did talk about the issue with parking on the grass, wearing out spots. They didn't seem to have any problem alternating ends or moving around to prevent wear and tear on the grass. So something to keep an eye on, but obviously it's not going to be an issue till really next year because our season's coming to an end. So, but something just to keep in mind. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Yep, see, Brenda.
Um,
I think asking probably Kurt a question.
go ahead.
Yeah, from my understanding, Kurt, maybe you guys discussed this. The marble that was put on the side for the curbing for the green on the access road, or I'm not sure what we call it, between the Arts Center and the green. I thought purposely that was put at an angle so that cars can easily climb onto and off of the grass, whereas everywhere else it's square. But that area was put on an angle so that, it would cut down on, wear and tear on the grass. Did you guys discuss that at all at the meeting?
Regardless of how the curbing is, our regulations preclude vehicles from being on the grass, regardless of how it's, I don't know how it's set up, but that's something that's, whatever the situation is, would have to be addressed.
And Brenda, there was one spot, I think, that they did lower curbing, like the granite was lowered in one area, so people.
Yeah, and it's put on like a diamond instead of straight. It was put like that so that, you can drive up and down.
There's like a pocket in
Yeah.
it where people could get up on it. But we could definitely, if they want to bring that forward, if that's one of the concerns that they have, bringing it back to the town, we can definitely listen to what they have to say and review that.
Yep.
Anything else, Brenda?
Nope, that was it. Thank you.
Lisa, did you have your hand?
Yeah, my understanding, what was explained to me about that access point by the Arts Center
Yeah.
was to provide accessibility, like for people in wheelchairs, things like that. That's what I was told, but it could very well have been for vehicles, but I wasn't made aware of that piece of it. That's all I wanted to know.
Yeah. I think that would have, I don't know for sure, we'd have to go back and look, but I think that would have been discussed with Steve Werbner
Mhm.
when they were putting in that granite curbing and limiting what they were going to use for it. All right, thank you, Kurt. Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Water Commission met on September 20th. They discussed, they actually received a request from the Connecticut State Police about possibly extending water to their barracks due to quality issues. They still continue discussions about the leak detection. Connecticut Water is working with Connecticut Professional Water Services to kind of test their meters and figure out what the source of the leak is. But otherwise, the Water Commission had a banner year of revenue and profits. They have about 1.34 million in cash in bank, and overall their customers, I think, especially with the renovations earlier this year after the potential lightning strike damage to one of the systems, they've been pretty good with their water systems. And then on the 23rd, the Conservation Commission met, did a site walk of King. There were some complaints about trees in the river that might have been caused by the town property. Kind of the site walk, what we did find was it's one of the larger boulders on the Willimantic River. It's mostly a lot of buildup from upstream, so it's not really something that the commission can take care of, but they're going to look into it and talk to planning and development about what they could even do, because it's not a high risk, but for canoers and boaters, they're concerned that it would be hazardous for them to use for water recreation purposes going up and down that section. And that is it for me.
Okay, Bill?
We had a meeting on the Commission on People with Disabilities, and there was a couple important things that they touched on. They had Caitlin Gordon from EDC there, and they were just talking about back and forth on how they can better educate businesses on the importance of hiring people with disabilities. And it looks like the two commissions are going to be working together to try and coordinate that and then do a whole education thing. I know there's a survey out that the EDC has going on, and they are waiting for results of that survey. There was also talk about what they were going to be doing at Celebrate Tolland. But one of the bigger things that they talked about was the accessibility on the green. And the possibility, Lisa was on the meeting, and she had shared that they were looking at the purchase of a affordable sidewalk per se to make the green more accessible. And really anywhere where accessibility is an issue in town for events. And, you know, there's been some additional things that have happened since this meeting. But I'll probably let Lisa share more about that.
Perfect.
But that was the bulk of the meeting, those things that are happening. So it was a good meeting and exciting things happening. So that's good.
Thank you. That's a good update. I don't have anything from the last meeting that we had. I don't think I've had anything since then. Okay, that gets us to 8.1, consideration of approval to transfer 27,000 from the ambulance reserve account to the capital project for ambulance 640 replacement account.
Okay, tonight I have the chief here, but I'll just go over this one very quickly. What happened was we did have the $285,000 as part of our capital improvement budget, which is funded by the ambulance reserve fund, where we take fees each year and set it aside to be able to replace certain things within the fire department capital items, mainly ambulances. When the chief went out to get the quotes for the ambulances, there's for this ambulance, they did all their specifications. There's updated code requirements that they need to do regarding stretchers and different equipment that's required under the code. Because of that, and also the timing, there's so much delays because of COVID and getting equipment, vehicles, anything along the lines. The actual cost has increased about $27,000 from when this was put together over a year ago in the budget. There are funds available within the ambulance reserve fund to cover this, and what we're asking is just for the council to approve a transfer. It's not even considered a supplemental appropriation because the other account already exists. So just to, under your powers, to move the 27,000 from the reserve to this to fund the ambulance, so you can get it ordered, which will take a significant amount of time to even get it delivered. If you have any questions, the chief is here and his staff to respond.
All right. Does anybody have any questions on this? No? All right. I'm good. I don't have any questions. I know that's a shot.
All right, Steve Jones will make a motion that now therefore be resolved by the Tolland Town Council approves the transfer of 27,000 from the ambulance reserve account to the ambulance 640 replacement project account approved by the Tolland Town Council on September 28, 2021.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Kurt,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Bill,
All right.
I'm an aye, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's 8.2.
Now,
Consideration of approval to allow the town manager to authorize applying for the SAFER, SAFER grant, the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, what it stands for, through FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program.
okay, I'm going to introduce part of this, but then I'm going to let the chief take over to give you a little more specifics. Basically, what this will allow in the next budget process, my hope was to be able to add an additional public safety officer, which is also a firefighter as well. And over the years, there's been increased demands on the department, less volunteerism. There's an awful workload, responses, the ability to respond has been limited in some instances. So we're looking at trying to increase the number of staff there that are paid staff that would be available to structure the hours going forward to make sure that there is appropriate coverage for the town. The chief presented this opportunity for a grant And in order to apply for it, the town would have to commit to a future budget. What it would allow us for is up to 5 public safety officers, firefighters / firefighter. And they would, if we were awarded the grant, they would pay for these up to 5 officers for up to 3 years, but in the 4th year, the town would have to be committed to fund them in the budget, which could be anywhere upwards to $500,000 or more, depending on where fringe benefit costs and everything else are at that point. We understand that the town may not be able to commit to 5. This is certainly where the fire department would like to head. But we understand that may not be possible. I wanted to bring forward to you what the chief requested. Certainly, you can think about any number that you may be able to commit to. Anything would be appreciated. Like I said, my goal in the next upcoming budget would have been to at least add 1 more public safety officer. I would have loved to add a couple more, but based on the impact on the budget, it may not have been feasible to do that. He certainly does need it, and I will let him elaborate more as to the needs for this, and then you could certainly have any questions that you have presented to him.
Perfect. Do you want to come up here? Or do you want to stay there? Whatever you're most
He
comfortable
should
with.
be closer to the thing so they can hear him.
The little thing that's going to track everything.
To the owl,
Yes, boss.
please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
So I have my assistant chief, Carl Dozen here tonight, my deputy chief, Doug Innemeyer, my captain in EMS operations, Captain Korn, and Jack Lozzi, one of our members that's on the, that was on the board of directors, but we recruited him to be an officer of the department. I'm gonna hand my boss the updated versions. I know I included, or we included, some numbers and some analysis of it. So you guys have some time to think about this. It's a golden opportunity is what I'm being told from FEMA to apply for this type of grant. So that is an updated version that Lieutenant Pelosi,
Brenda is
sorry,
going to need, I'm sorry, do we have this electronically, Chief? right
I
now?
will send it with the, I will send it to Lisa, and Lisa can send it out from there if that's acceptable.
Yeah, I won't be able to participate if I can't see the information.
Well,
Okay.
Brenda, if you look in the agenda, there
There
are
is-
slides in the agenda.
The slides are pretty much identical. We just kind of color coded stuff just for view factor wise, I think.
Yeah. So if you look in the packet, Brenda, starting on page 8 are the slides.
Can you hear me?
You're also going to have to ensure that the rest of the public knows where to find the packet so that they could also follow along.
So it's pretty much comparable to the packet that we already provided. I know those, that was early items, but we color coded some of the items to make it clearer. We thought the color,
Lisa, can you bring up the packet? Can you bring up the agenda? And then we can just share screen.
I'll see what I can find here.
Lieutenant Pelosi can email it to Brenda, right?
Actually, email it to the program, the packet to Lisa, then we can pull it up on the screen also, so the public can see
Hold
it.
on a minute.
And I apologize for that.
No, no,
We just
that's
some
all right.
last minute tweaks
See,
that
I'm
we
not
met
signed
last
on
night,
here,
just
so
to
I
kind
have
of color
to
code
get
to
my email.
kind of make it easier to read.
Yeah,
Oh,
I apologize.
actually, you
I
should be able to
apologize.
bring it up in the Tolland.org. so
That's
pass
what
it.
I'm doing.
Yeah. Or yeah,
I'm
Mike.
sorry, want Lisa Hancock.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm in the.
Lisa, are you on email them? Do you have it on email?
I have a packet.
You have the packet, right? So, yeah, I would say go to the agendas here. Pull up the packet. And we can then share that.
It's better to get to your page, I think. Sorry, folks.
That's all right, take your time.
If anyone has a stick, I can put it on a stick and walk them.
I think just, I don't know if I have my stick with me. If you sent it in email.
I want to just get right to your page because that'll get it better. Because that'll have the packet. I'll only have the agenda over there.
That's the full packet. Then go page 8.
What size it?
You see that? Okay.
Yeah.
Now. Geez.
A little smaller. A little bigger now. One more. There you go. That's good. And then share the screen.
Second there. Okay,
Brenda, can you see that on the screen?
can you see that okay, Brent?
I can see it.
Okay,
All right.
perfect. All right. John, you had said we have time to think about that. That was going to be my very first question is when do we have to have a decision?
March 12th is the answer date to apply for it. So we want to make sure that we have time. And like I said, FEMA says that this is the biggest year. I can supply the town, the last 10 years of other towns close to us that have applied for it. Kenny Bunkport, Maine just applied for it last year and got it. So people are trying to be proficient in pre-planning. So
Yeah.
with that being said, if you would like, with your permission, Madam, Lieutenant Pelosi will go through the slides just to explain the difference between the slides of what you have and what Lisa's gonna go through.
Yep, take it away.
Sure. So can we actually start? I got the order of my slides wrong in terms of the story to tell. So can we start on the, I believe it's the 4th slide? Because that will give you an idea of the call volume that we have
Yeah,
over the past 10 years.
go down a couple.
Yeah, I'm trying, the mouse is not working right. See, it's freezing up. Sorry.
That's all right. Technical difficulties, we have to expect this with a hybrid plan, so we flow with it.
There we go. Which one?
Another page? One more, I think. Yeah,
That
call
one.
track.
All right, let's get you.
There you go.
What this shows you basically is that we've gotten busier over time. I don't think it's any secret and I don't think it's any surprise. In the first half of the past 10 years, 2012 to 2016, we averaged about 1,600 to 1,650 calls a year. Right now, we're on trend to average in the second half between 1,800 and 1,900 calls a year. We're on track to have a record-breaking year and really cross over that 2,000 call threshold again. So as we get busier, the issue with that presents itself that we have concurrent calls. We always have staff for one ambulance, 24/7, 365 for the most part. So we can always get one ambulance out. When we have a concurrent call, so 2 EMS calls at the same time, we don't always have staff for that second ambulance. And we have busy times during the day that we don't have coverage for that second ambulance, which is the real problem. If you look at I don't think it's in this particular deck, but if you look at by hour, our call volume from midnight to 11 o'clock at night, you'll see that our busiest times easily are from 8 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. That's when the bulk of your calls are. From midnight to 6 a.m. is only 12%. We don't get many calls. So having, staffing for the ambulance isn't as critical at that time, but from during prime time for the most part, when we only have one ambulance, it's a crapshoot whether we're gonna get a second ambulance on the air. So what happens when we can't get a second ambulance on the air is we have to rely upon our mutual aid partners. And that includes Vernon, Ellington, Willington, and what the result of that is increased time to respond to getting the emergency service on scene that you need. Anywhere between 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And I can tell you personally, as an officer, it kills me. When I'm there in the hospital and I see the second call come out and I'm like, oh, I really hope we get an ambulance on the air. But it's difficult. So if we look, if we go back to the other slide that we had before that shows the mutual aid coverage. Thank you. Gotta jump around.
That one?
Yes, so this is a reporting on basically how often we have to do this. When we get that second call, the third call that we can't staff an ambulance for. Now, to keep in mind, we only have 2 ambulances. So if we get a third call or a fourth call, which is not unprecedented, those we have to absolutely rely upon mutual aid partners for. But looking over the trend over the years, one of the issues that we find is that volunteers are busy. So it's not like, you know, especially during that prime time, 6 to 9 o'clock at night, it's not like you can say the volunteers will definitely get there for the second ambulance, because not only do they need to respond, you need a crew. You need a driver, somebody who's been certified as an EMT, as well as certified to drive our ambulances. And you need an EMT who's certified to be in the back as a primary technician. So it's tough to get that crew together during that time. And you can see that we've had a huge jump in the number of times that we've had to call out for a mutual aid ambulance, especially in the past 2 years with COVID and medical calls increasing. That's just the reality of the situation.
So can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
This mutual aid slide, is this when we have to call mutual aid for us, or is this
Yes.
when we're also mixing, when we're providing mutual aid to other towns?
This is strictly when we call mutual aid for us,
For Tom?
when we can't cover a Tolland call because we're committed somewhere else,
Okay,
or we don't have an ambulance to cover it essentially. We do provide mutual aid to other towns too, so we could be on a call in Vernon when that comes out, but
So
This
can I ask a question?
yep.
So is there a breakdown for these calls on how many of them are on 84 and how many of them are for residents in their homes? For the mutual aid, specifically?
not to that specificity.
Okay.
84 is a tough one to delineate in the data just because of the way we store it. Believe it or not, we don't get an address for 84 because there is no real address. We get latitude and longitudinal codes. So it's difficult to say this was definitely an 84. When we have an address, it's easier to delineate in the data, but
Yeah, I used to be a medic. I get it.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you.
90% of those calls are most likely residential or business wise versus if you look at our call data from a month-to-month basis, the 84 calls are not as dramatic as everyone thinks. It's the traumatic calls of the tractor trailers or the lane closures. And we give a report on that. Assistant Chief Dojan gives it every month. That's socialized.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
so this is really mainly the residential need that we have for ambulance calls.
yes.
Okay.
Residential, commercial,
Yeah.
business wise. Yes.
Something that's happening here in Tolland proper, not the highway.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So the majority of our mutual aid calls that we have to tone out a mutual aid agency for are EMS calls. Fire and service calls can be handled without that combined crew of that certified technician and that certified driver. So if we have a fire alarm, we need fire personnel to get there, but they can, you know, find that there's no fire and reset the alarm. Not that big of a deal, but that because that EMS needs a designated crew, 2 people to really that are certified in both areas to get the ambulance and get it to the house or the location, that's where a lot of times we struggle, especially from those hours from 6 at night till 10 at night. A lot of calls, good chance for a concurrent call, and it's tough to turn people out for on the volunteer side. The other problem that you face oftentimes is you get burned out. To be perfectly honest, when I'm on duty for a 12-hour shift, it used to be, you know, 2 calls, 3 calls during that shift, and it was doable. Now it's turning into 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're out all night. And it's really fun to go to work the next day on that.
Yeah.
So that's what happens basically.
Can I ask one other quick question? I think I was talking to Chief about this, Captain, I'm sorry, at Birch Grove is a lot, we see like this is literally double in some areas of the calls that we've been getting And now I know with 2020, we had the impact of COVID, but we're seeing that continue over and actually increase in 2021 because you don't even have all 2021's numbers and we're already higher than 2020. So what I've noticed a lot in talking to people, and I'm hoping to see if I can get you guys' opinion on this, is there any education that we could be doing? Because I'm hearing that there's a lot of people calling the emergency line and calling for an ambulance that aren't like really, they don't necessarily need an ambulance, but they're calling you guys out because I don't know exactly the whys or the hows, but is that something that you're seeing or anything that we could do from an education perspective of when to call for an ambulance and when not? I know that gets kind of sticky and trying to come up with that, but do you think that there's something going on that we might be able to impact on that?
So it's a double-edged sword. So during the COVID times, people were not calling 911, and we did a big educational people to call 911 because we had that many more CPR calls and life-threatening situations. The problem is that this is a national problem.
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to research the National Fire Act of 2023-24. This is not only happening in Tolland, but it's happening across the nation. So there's going to be a huge shortage, probably most likely between police, fire, and EMS coming down the pike. If you look at the trend setting right now, even the commercial services are having a hard time staffing or getting people to sign up. So this is going to be a trend setter, and that's why we're here tonight before you to try to be ahead of the curve. Because like what the lieutenant said, you know, we've been very fortunate with the volunteering staff, and we by no means do want to get rid of the volunteer staffing because it's been saving us for a long time. But we're trying to predict, not to cover other towns, but when we cover other towns and the other towns coming over here, so it's a share. So this actually just got brought up at the the EMS chiefs meeting, I think last Thursday, because a lot of towns are looking at a lot of not that I want to say that in public comment, but a lot of towns are looking at each other towns saying, hey, we're getting abused or we're getting calls. You have to maintain a 50% ratio before the state of Connecticut OEMS looks into your level of service saying, hey, you can't handle this anymore. We're going to take your PSAP. We'd like to go for a ride. We're going out right now. So, you know, in honesty, that's so we've looked at a couple close towns close to us that we've been going probably a lot more frequent to, but they're maintaining that 50% level. But it's happening across the state. There's some bigger towns close to us that mutual aid companies are going for a 45-minute transport or a 45-minute 911 call, which gets scary. So we're trying to predict the future here where, you know, we have some apartments and some other things that are occurring, and we don't want to be looking to the community like we're not able to provide the service. And it's a difficult time, but the only reason that we're encouraging is because this is the biggest year for the FEMA federal funding. Make sense? Did I miss
Absolutely.
anything, Cap or Chief?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we don't typically like to discourage people from calling us,
Yeah.
just because there is that case where we need to be there and they are in actual distress that we need to help. So it's not typically something we do. Like the chief said, there are drivers of calls if you have a high concentration of higher risk people of having medical events, we're there pretty often. And they drive calls. Weather events drive calls. We've had a lot of weather events over the past 2 or 3 years. The hurricane, tropical storm last year, the multiple rain events this year have all driven several different types of service calls, trees, power lines down, and then just the stress of the situation triggers medical calls as well. COVID was interesting because it was like a rubber band. And from March to about May, June, that rubber band kept getting stretched further and further back because nobody was calling, then all of a sudden it let go. And I think to some extent, we still see the repercussions of that, of people not going to get treatment for, you know, preventative type of treatment and experiencing medical events because they didn't go to the doctor, they didn't go to the hospital, they didn't get the treatment that they should have in the time past. So, but it just seems to keep going up.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more inpatient or release to home. So our community is faced with a lot of, more medical devices in the household of being released from the hospitals and being home. And those calls are, going up, that we have to go there and, evaluate or transport. The lift assists in the normal non-type of medical calls, but the state of Connecticut just changed that this year. When we go, we have to do a full evaluation. Not that we're in the business to make money off of it, but yet it's tying up that first level. So when these guys go, assist, I can tell you our lift assists are over the last year, already high record of over 190 calls from the previous years. So last year, the lift assists are just going up, and we're going to a lot of those. As soon as that ambulance has to go to it, and it's taken offline, and that's maybe some of the numbers where you see the mutual aid or somebody else coming in. Those are increasing, if that makes sense.
You want us to go to the next slide or?
Is there another one? I kind of talked through the.
I think there's a couple there. Data
That's
provided.
already been discussed, right?
We discussed the findings
You
there.
got that, okay.
Talked about that.
Talked about the findings.
Yep.
And then these are,
That's what we.
these are
submit.
the other towns that were awarded the grants in prior years. And the dollar amounts associated, the UC City of New Britain got almost $2.4 million for the award that they've received in the past.
Just one thing to note, the lesser amounts are towns that have multiple fire departments. Watertown has a bunch of volunteer departments within the town limits. Farmington also has, I believe, 3 to 4 fire departments. They have one that is staffed 24/7, which is town of Farmington. So that you're looking at 115,000, which could be two people versus, the New Britons, the Southingtons, the Hartford. I think Hartford, yes, Hartford's in there. They're just one department in one jurisdiction. So it impacts the numbers negatively.
So,
Did you want to talk about those numbers as far as future, if we went all the way with it?
Okay, so it's up to you. We've done a little bit of research on different models of service for the town. Right now, we're considered a combination department. We follow a NFPA standard, which is for volunteer departments, because of the number of paid staff that we have does not meet the full career designation. Under that standard, it's NFPA 1720. We're considered a rural town. We fall, I believe it's under 500 people per square mile. We fall at about 325 to 350 per square mile, based on the square mileage of the town and the population of the recent population. So we're right in the area where, as a combination department, we should have 6 people staffed at all times. Under what Lieutenant Pelosi talked about, we meet that criteria during the days. It starts thinning out at 6 o'clock, because that's where the career staff shift ends and it becomes 100% volunteer. So this is where, when we considered adding the number that we were requesting, was to cover that gap from 6 p.m. to midnight, and sort of redistribute the day staff. Then I went a little further to a sort of a hybrid model of a combination department where we would staff two of the the two largest stations. These are all minimally staffed based on the next level, which is NFPA 1710, which falls to career departments. So just, and these are all rough numbers. So based on a half-staffed department, which would station 240 in the center here and station 140 on Crystal Lake Road, to staff that with the two ambulances and one fire truck would be an annual of $5,429,200. And this is payroll alone. It's not considering overtime to cover shifts for vacation, sick, injured of anything like that. That's a basic bare bones, 3 people on a fire truck and 2 people on the ambulance, which is required. If we were to go to a full career department, we would be looking at about $7,639,600. $7,639,600. And that's the line staff. That's not including the chief officers that are required, any admin staff such as a training officer, things of that nature, which we handle all right now with the volunteer staff. So putting it into perspective, what we're looking at and trying to follow the trend that's been happening over the past few years, that's where we came up with the 5 personnel. That allows us to at least staff for part of the week with a second shift, if I may say, a 4 to midnight, Monday through Friday, leaving the weekend for volunteer, 100% volunteer. And then after midnight would be volunteer, where it's lesser. That gives us enough to, like I said, distribute our day shift and then add that partial night shift.
Would there be any needed additional equipment? Like, would we need an additional truck,
Nope.
ambulance?
No, that's with existing equipment. Actually, we have, because of the nature of the town where we need water supply, we have tankers. That's having a tanker sitting in the station, and there's options with the firefighters would have to make a decision based on the area of town on which apparatus to take. So if it's, and I don't want to get too technical about it because I'll lose everybody in the weeds, but to be out on the Plains Road section to get a fire, we would be choosing tank trucks to go out there because each of them carries 3,000 gallons of water versus our pumpers, which have 1,000. So more is better, So the water goes on, the more water we have, it'll supply and make our operations more practical. The other little twist in there is we do have a ladder truck. And that's something with a full career department, you would have to make sure that was staffed. If we went with a half, it could be the people that were on the engine could jump in the ladder truck and go. So it's a lot of maneuvering on our end and choosing the right apparatus to respond to the calls.
Brenda, you have your hand up? You're on mute,
You're on
Brenda.
mute.
Sorry, I thought I clicked it. Thank you. Is this grant just for firefighters, or does it also include EMTs or medics or paramedics, whatever the designation is?
It's for firefighter EMTs.
Thank you. And
Fires, you can do EMTs or combination.
firefighters, EMTs, or a combination. Okay, excellent. And for training for drivers and training for the firefighter medics, is there training close to us? Is that something that maybe we would get more volunteers? And I'm not saying we need volunteers to not do what you guys are requesting, but in order to ensure that we have enough volunteers, is there enough training local and offered enough so that we don't eventually start losing volunteers also? I hope that question made sense.
Brenda, this is Don Corn, the medical captain. We do have a we do have our own EMS instructor here that we contract out, that we are looking to offer in-house an EMT course for any residents who want to take it, who might want to help out. And he also does do our recertification.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, because one of the reasons why I didn't get recertified, because at the time it was too far away to go. So I just let my certification lapse.
Have you back, I'll get you an application.
Thank you. I need to get a few things off of my plate before I start volunteering for you guys again. But also you were mentioning that you needed for the ambulance to make sure people are certified as a driver and as a medic. Do those people need to be like, could you have someone that is just a driver and is certified as just a driver? And then someone that's just a medic, or do they both need to be cross-certified?
So,
Good. Yep. Go
right,
ahead.
so the state requires in order for an ambulance to to travel and go on scene and operate, you need at least an EMT to be in the back, and at least an EMR, which is a basic responder. So you need that is the very minimum you need. However, we like to roll with EMTs because that doesn't limit the ambulance's ability. If you have an EMR, they can't operate independently at all.
Right. Okay. That was sort of my next question, but I appreciate that. I think that's it for now. I would love to be able to see just because I'm a visual person, the breakdown of the the coverage. I think you were referring probably to some sort of charts that you have written yourself. It's not going to keep me from knowing what I want to do now, but it's something that I'm curious about and would love to see, the coverage or, the charts that you have for that. But that's it for now. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just comment on that. So we do a cross training. We try to encourage a lot of our personnel to be cross trained both in fire and EMS. We actually have 3 students, I think, at the Eastern Connecticut Fire School that are EMTs right now. That are I think one of them is an EMT or UPenn student that's taking her fire one. So we try to cross train. But the problem is some of the medical calls sometimes takes more than 1 or 2 people. Sometimes you have people in, whether it's a psychological or CPR call. So we cross-train even our fire police or special members that we can still keep an EMT or somebody else in town and let them drive the ambulance. So we do a lot of cross-training, and the staff does a phenomenal job with the driver training program and the training in-house. And we save the town a lot of money to keep the staff here to do the training, because then when the call levels happen, they're all not out of town. They're right here at our own facilities doing the training, and we can still handle the calls, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Does anybody else? Kurt?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I just start out, I do think that's something where we need to be heading in direction. I have intimate familiarity with a different town because of family members. Being in a volunteer fire department, my grandfather he's 76, he was driving an ambulance because he was the only volunteer who showed. Well aware of the situation. You wouldn't want that guy driving anything. So I certainly appreciate this, but I hope this isn't like a step to being a full career staff with no volunteers. I think the volunteer part, I know that's not, at least at this point, it seems like every year we, approach that. I mean, not that, I understand there's plenty of reasons why we're adding staff, but I do think keeping the volunteers involved, at least somewhat, is very important. And Deputy Chief Dozier mentioned something about the, I think it's NFPA. What, as we add more, you're mentioning some of the combo versus career versus volunteer. Is there different, I wasn't entirely sure where you're getting at. Is there different requirements for things that we have to meet or pay? I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, it's staffing levels is the basic thing. We're driven by OSHA. First and foremost, and the OSHA rules require us to have a minimum of 4 people to respond to an incident. We have to have it, we go by a 2 in, 2 out. So 2 people in the building, you have to have 2 people outside to be able to rescue them if something happens. And that magnifies as you go larger, so if you go to 4 people inside, you need 4 people outside. That's federal law. We can't get away from that. That's why we're at the staffing we are right now with the career staff during the daytime. When I started on the career staff, we had 3 of us. So we didn't even meet the OSHA 2 in, 2 out, but we didn't have anywhere near the call volume that we have now. The OSHA, the NFPA standards are consensus standards, which mean we are not bound, we're not an NFPA state, but being a consensus standard, if there is a fatality, if there's an injury, this is just as much a legal document as the OSHA document is. So we try as much as we can to comply with everything that they require. The volunteer / combo 1720 is more lenient as far as staffing goes. When you get to 1710, the full career department guide, it's, minimum staffing, 4 people on an engine. And then if we get to ISO, which is the Insurance Service Office, they go even a step further with further staffing. And that's what drives our insurance rates for our homeowners insurance, our business insurance. So we sort of, it's a slippery slope to where we go. But we're complying very well with the 1720 right now, and we do comply with the OSHA 2 in, 2 out. The hard part is with the volunteers is every firefighter is required to do 200 hours of training per year. The EMTs are required to have 40 hours every 2 years of CEUs. So then we go on to all the stuff that we have. The minutia of our world, the sexual harassment training, the bloodborne pathogens, the social media, everything that under the sun. It's a large commitment for everybody, whether you work full-time or you're a volunteer. And we've been very fortunate that our volunteers are very enthusiastic about maintaining their training throughout this whole time. And we've done a lot of it online, which makes it easier because they can sit at home and do it. And then we do our in-person, along with we have to do an annual live burn where they actually go to a facility and we do live fire training. And that's a mandatory OSHA requirement. So there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle here that we're trying to sort out. And I know it's a lot to throw at everybody in one. And, we're more than willing to sit down, any questions you guys have that we can help you with. But that's how we came upon the numbers. And this is by no means any way trying to affect the level of volunteerism in town, because that's a huge tradition in this town. And we're able, it's tough sometimes to maintain it, but we're there, our heads are above water still. It's just that we don't want to be on that end where one of the residents suffers because we're not able to staff. Our ambulance turnaround times, because Rockville Hospital is not really a treating facility right now, is close to 1.5 to 2 hours. 2 hours more if we're going into Hartford to get that ambulance transported and the patient delivered to the hospital everything cleaned up and back in service in Tolland is about 2 hours. So you're looking at even one ambulance going out of town and hoping that we don't have something else while we're gone, when we know it's a slim pickings for people.
And you had mentioned, you just kind of briefly talked about what the new staffing, if we go with the full 5, what, could you go over that again, what the additional coverage would be? I think you mentioned 4 to 10 would be another shift, or 4 to midnight.
Or you want me to talk about it?
Or is that still on the?
Yeah, so,
Chief.
like Carl said, the assistant chief, if you look at the past 10-year trend of what I've put into the annual report, my goal has always been to try to cover the 6 to 6 timeframe. What we're trying to do now is to add some additional staffing in between, but also cover another, almost not a third shift, but my first 2 guys start at 6. And what Lieutenant Pelosi showed you the numbers, as soon as that call comes in and our trends are going up, I don't have anybody in town till 8 a.m. The 2 second guys come in at 8, and then the other 2 guys come in at 10. So when we're running those back-to-back calls, some towns around us only run 1 ambulance and they just, go with it. We run, when we can, both ambulances. So over the last year or 2, I think it's fair to say either Rob or myself or someone else has been on the ambulance, just to keep that trend going. So we'd like to take the burden off of those additional calls of that 4 to midnight, because then it gives the volunteer staffing a chance to get home from work, get a chance. They have a duty crew that starts at 6. We're always running that second, and these guys are coming out at 4:30, 5 o'clock, right when they get home to run that second ambulance. So we're trying to take that burden off to keep the volunteerism going. We're very fortunate to have a great career staff that do come back, a couple of them, that come back and jump in. It's an hour overtime or 2, but yet they come back to fill in and supplement as well. So we're very fortunate to have a combo department that works hand in hand.
Okay.
Training, we don't have a training career person and a volunteer train. We work hand in hand, and we're trying to keep that motto going, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does. That's all I got. Sure.
Okay. Steve?
Just to piggyback off of the volunteers and comments, would you foresee, if you did add additional staffing, greater opportunities for recruitment and retention and other opportunities to perhaps expand or create more, I'm trying to think of the phrase, essentially, as people age out, you have that next wave, that next generation coming in prepared, and you kind of have that long-term plan. in
So
place.
we're definitely striving to that, like the captain said, we're striving to get another instructor in-house to run some current EMT refresher classes or in-house classes in Tolland. We're very fortunate to have the University of Connecticut, because we grab a lot of those UConn students that are here that are supplementing a lot of it. The COVID times have hurt us because the Explorer program has been on a hold because of the in-persons and everything else wise. But once we start that back up this year, hopefully we've recruited a handful of the Explorers that they start getting in training, they get into EMT, they get into fire, and a lot of them stay here and they continue that. But we've all seen the volunteerism has gone, both moms and dads and everybody's working everybody's working now. So it's kind of gone down a trend set, but we're going to try to re-spark it. Obviously doing everything we can. We created the signs to put around the firehouses. We put on our message board. These guys, I think, got over Celebrate Talent. How many candidates did you get?
We did have 2 people sign up for information, so that was positive.
Hopefully this weekend with Bells Across America, some people from the community will show up for, the fallen firefighters and everything else wise, and we can recruit and talk to some people, but, hopefully even with the firehouse projects, we can hit the neighborhoods again, because it's a cycle. We get some people up in this neighborhood, then we lose them, they retire, they leave, and then you're cycling the people. It's like a washing machine.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah,
and then in regards to the EMS calls for mutual aid, so it looks like, we have an overwhelming amount of calls when someone's out, that means we call them that. So if we did have this additional staff, I think the chief or someone else may have at some point referred to kind of the ambulance reserve fund as our bread and butter. How much more of that bread and butter would we end up kind of recouping, because we wouldn't be calling on another town to help us out with an additional ambulance? because we have the staff to cover that second one.
And I knew you were gonna ask that tonight, and I should have brought my little spreadsheet. You get your numbers, so I knew you were
I'm
gonna
letting
ask
them
that.
ask all these questions. See,
Man, I knew somebody else was gonna be in the audience, and I
and
asked that question.
We know our audience, so we came prepared. So we did a trend, I just went back for our mutual aid calls that we had missed. And this year so far, we've lost $34,000 of revenue on missed calls. Last year was about 30,000. And it gradually goes down less and less, and it follows the graph that Lieutenant Pelosi had come up with, because the past 2019 back, we had less missed calls because we had less calls.
Yeah.
So the 5-year total was $110,000 of revenue that we've missed based on missed calls or calls where we've had to have mutual aid come in and cover us.
And conversely, if we had that additional staffing,
It
you
works,
would
it
have
works
the
out,
more
it
opportunities
works
to go to other
opposite.
towns and further boost that. revenue.
So it works opposite, right? So we might lose, but yet if we have the additional staffing, you're gonna recoup some of that other extra money.
Okay.
So right now, when we're going to like Vernon had last night, 4 calls in a row, we grabbed that other one. Luckily, we didn't have nothing in between that time period, but we grabbed that. And obviously that changes from year to year with the state rates.
That covers it for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I have a few questions, not a lot, because everybody asked a lot of that. So right now, what you guys were saying is your biggest real peak time for these calls is 6 to 9 PM. But all of our careers are off by 6 o'clock. So how are we stopping the 6 to 9s right now?
Volunteers pick up at 6 PM to 6 AM. We have a duty officer and a duty crew. The problem with that is a lot of times the duty officer, depending on the type of call, I'm losing that officer. So then I have nobody. But right now from 6 PM to 6 AM, it's a duty officer. Most of the times with a full ambulance, but there's some nights that duty officer is the driver or, filling in for that position. These 3 guys right here can tell you, twice on Sunday, they've been the duty officer, but yet the other tech wasn't available or didn't show, so they had to take the call. So, but 6 PM to 6 AM is covered by volunteer staffing. And then we do a, tone out for the second ambulance or the tones go off for a fire call, whatever it might be. So like Saturday, Carl had
8 calls.
8, I was gonna say 9, but 8 calls. He was going all day long. That's my assistant chief out of town because he's filling the requirement of the ambulance, but yet he's a duty officer.
So I know we've talked about this in the past before, John, is I know with the new ambulance coming on, the likelihood of us being able to, especially with the new, actually, we were talking about this at Tolland, Assistant Chief and I, so looking at with the new firehouses coming on, the new space availability, will we have the opportunity to keep and update one of the ambulances that we have or go to a third ambulance? Because that does overall help the fire department, which helps the town, which helps the tax rate, which is, it's just water falls down by having that third ambulance and having staffing for that. It's a revenue generator. It's the only revenue generator that the town has. Is there that, the idea that we're gonna head down that path with this?
I am hopeful. So the plan is that the last 2 ambulances that we're replacing, one this year, one the following year, those ambulances are at its maximum life, which means we've remounted the ambulances over the last 3 times.
Right.
So now we're going out for a new chassis and a new cab. We'll probably most likely look at a remount, I would say, at the next round when we go, because it saves the town almost 100,000. With the firehouses, we get about a 2 to 3 year, maybe, do station 340, 440, and then obviously station 140, is the main firehouse. But a good example is when one of our ambulances got into an auto accident, we lost $36,000 that 1 month just because it was a very high call volume. So we lost that volume. When we have an accident or something, we're required, like the bus companies and everybody else, that we have to report it. The ambulance has to go out of service. It has to get inspected, replaced on. But if we had a third ambulance, you can put that back in its place, and we don't miss a beat. So we are fortunate to, hopefully, that's why we're trying to pre-plan to go that direction. And then we will revisit after the 3 year, after the firehouses are done, and, you know, by then we'll be coming up to that cycle of replacing that next ambulance, and that's where you guys were gracious to approve a bid waiver. We have a great manufacturer. We get that ambulance, we keep consistent, and we keep cycling it.
Okay. So the only other thing that I think, I appreciate you guys coming tonight and giving us all this information and you humoring us if we have more questions to send them over. I think we're definitely gonna want the full council here to discuss it and review it. The only thing that concerns me is, I think it's a great grant opportunity, but it binds the hands of future councils
Right.
to, right now, the 460, it's almost $500,000 plus 3 years increases and everything else, you know, we're
Right.
gonna be looking at easily $500,000. That's a big hit for the town to take in 1 year.
Right.
So I'm kind of really interested in how we can look at, because I do agree with you, Lisa, that you were gonna probably come forward with a new firefighter or public safety officer in this budget. So how do we balance, maybe it's not 5, maybe we say we're gonna put 1 in this year, 1 in next year, and we go for 3 or 2. What does that number look like? What are the scenarios that we can look at? Because on one hand, I don't want to not take the money from FEMA, right? We pay enough money into the government at a state and federal level that we can get some back in Connecticut. We should take it back in Connecticut. If we can get it down to our level, then we should most definitely take it. But on the other hand, by not having something built into the budget, we're looking at that $500,000 hit in 1 year, which is that's going to be a big impact on the mill in that 1 year. So how can we jockey through this? Is there any other thing that we can look to employ to find a way to get something in the budgets in a more leveled way, so we're not hitting that $500,000?
One way that we can look at it is your municipal stabilization fund, the ordinance allows the council to budget and put money into that besides any excess grant revenue, state of Connecticut grant revenues. The ordinance allows for you to set aside funds to be used for future year stabilization. My recommendation would be to maybe, if that's the route the council chooses through the budget process, I would need some direction as to how much to set up as a reserve to transfer into that account as part of the budget. Then what we could do is it's building in some money in your budget that eventually will be into that reserve that you could help offset future positions coming in year 4, depending on how many you have. You've already got some money built into your budget each year that you're moving over there. So maybe with a combination of both, you might be able to do something. That's one scenario. I would need an estimate of, you know, what number you're looking to entertain for each year. Is it 50,000 or more? If you put 50,000 1 year and then bring it up to 100,000 the next year, you have that 50,000 and another added each year, you're adding 50,000. Moving it into the reserve, the time year 5 comes along, you'll be able to maybe start using some of the reserve, maybe reduce or use that money in the budget as part of it, as the buildup.
As the offset,
Yeah, I mean, that's one way I'd recommend, and that you'd be able to legally do something like that.
I love having a finance person sitting there. I think we can definitely look at employing that, or the fact we know this year we're going to have more revenues coming in because of the package that we just received with all the grant
Right.
dollars that we're
I
getting
plan
from the
on
state.
Talking about that later.
Yep, so that's money that we're already looking at moving to the stabilization plan. So if we could try to utilize some sort of methodology to use the stabilization plan to kind of build in a slow raise impact, then it's not going to hit automatically in year 4, which is really my big concern. My concern is not adding the 5
Right.
people and
Right.
having the staff. My concern is not whether or not we're gonna have the call volume or an extra ambulance. My concern is just how it's gonna impact the overall mill and how we do that without having $500,000 hit at the same time.
And that's,
So-
we don't know where we're going as a community either.
Right.
That's why we felt it was our responsibility to bring this to you, to advise you of it, because we haven't applied for it in previous years. And this is the biggest funding year, and I know there's future apartments and other things that are gonna start taking off. We don't know where our call volume is gonna go, you know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where we're on a trend. We felt responsible to bring it to your attention.
No, I totally agree. I appreciate you bringing this forward. It's a great opportunity for the town to be able to realize more staffing there and do it in a way that's not gonna be a full $500,000 impact to go, but we're gonna get the benefit of those $500,000 worth of resources for at least the next 3 years before we hit that final number.
The only thing that will be on record is that we've been advised most likely it'll cover up to 3 years. We won't know until the final grant comes out, but obviously we have to seek permission through our boss that's doing a great job. We have to advise her. We would never apply to something behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, we're looking for some direction.
Well, and that would be indicative too. You know, if it comes back and says, no, we're only gonna give you enough money for 2,
Exactly.
totally different conversation we have to have.
Exactly. And you know what? We can apply for all that and we might not get awarded that either. So it's gotta be looked at, you know, both levels.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a really good starting point for us to at least, we're gonna need to make sure that we have this on another meeting to sit down and talk about what options you can come up with or ideas you can come up with, Lisa.
Yep.
Um,
What I would recommend at this point, since there is a request for a resolution, is that you you table the resolution for a future meeting, and we could bring it off the table when we're ready. I think we probably should discuss offline what route you'd like me to look at. And I can work with the chief and the deputies and everyone here to try to come up with some sort of a plan. Once we have some direction on, you know, you want us to look at 5, do you want us to look at 3, you want, 1. If you could at least give us some of that guidance, we can try to do different scenarios to make it work.
Yeah. Do you think you would have enough time to do that before the next meeting, or would you rather it go out to the end of October?
I would prefer the end of October. That'll give us, there's plenty of time before this grant has to be applied for.
Yep.
You know, are you okay with that?
No,
All
absolutely.
right, you know, maybe even the first meeting in November.
Probably could give us a couple times to meet
Yeah,
to work out a couple things, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
you
we
know, the
could
more
work-
scenarios you guys can come up with
Right.
that we can look
And
at.
obviously, we would encourage council, any questions or any, you know, scenarios to, you know, forward that through, you know, Lisa, whatever, to
Yeah.
get back and, you know, we can look at all the, you know, items, even for the, you know, the ones that aren't here tonight.
Yeah.
You know, give them a chance to kind of, you know, get those questions or those bugs worked out too.
Mhm.
See,
Sorry, so I may have missed the question. So what is the timeline for application?
I'm sorry.
We have plenty of time.
I'm
but-
sorry, March 12th.
Okay, so we have plenty.
So we got, yeah, so that's why we felt before the
That's-
process, you know.
Yeah.
That's the deadline, but they certainly are gonna need
We.
a
it's
month or
it's-
2
and-
at least
yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure that they're
If we
getting
can
the
start
language
it
in
in
place.
January,
Yeah.
Yeah,
because of all the back.
there's so much
work
stuff that we
has
have to
be
pull out
done
of her
to
office.
fulfill the grant in.
Yeah, no, that was just my main concern is not wanting to bind you guys too tight, to like having to scramble. to get
Thank you,
paperwork
thank you.
done,
Yeah,
so now
thank
my
you.
paperwork can,
There's a lot. Thank you.
I think with you guys shooting for a date of January, that gives us at least enough time to start talking about ideas and paths that we can follow. And from a budgetary perspective, Lisa or the new town manager, if you don't think I'll be on there, but we'll have, either way, Lisa will have the budget information and we'll at least start looking at that impact. So if there is something that we need to do to incorporate into the next year's budget, we'll have enough time to do that from the budgetary calendar perspective, because we don't get the Board of Ed budget, I think, till the first week of February, right?
Yeah, around the 14th, I think.
Yeah, so then at least you'll be able to build in some scenarios into your initial budgetary package. Anybody else have any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate, oh, no, yes?
Just seeing none, I would make a motion to table the resolution to a future meeting.
Kurt Jenner, I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Kurt?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
I'm an aye too, so we will table this
Thank
and we'll
you.
come back to it either the end of October or the first meeting in November, where we can go over what all the different scenarios are and options for the town.
Yeah, let's push it off to November, just so there's plenty of time, and since there isn't a rush, and that'll give you at least November, and if you had to go into December to discuss more, whatever, you can go from there.
Okay. All right, everybody, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate the fact that you.
No
Listen to
problem.
over here.
Great job, gentlemen, thank you.
All right, that gets us to 8.3, discussion and status of the 2019 to 2021 town council goals. Lisa?
Yes, because I'm trying to get to that page. Sorry,
If you don't, if you want to share, you can probably.
I
do
can,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
let me stop the share. There we go. Hi, Brenda.
Easier to stop than start. huh?
Yeah, it is. Well, it's still open underneath, but I can do that later. Okay, so at your last meeting, you requested an update on your goals. And what we did was we met with each department. The items in red in your packet are the items that have been added since the last time that we updated you. And I think that was when Mike Rosen was here. So, yeah, starting with do you want me to go through each one, or do you just want the document? It's up to you. I certainly don't mind.
I'm fine with the high level summary for each
Yeah.
section. That'd be
Yeah.
good. And then
Okay.
we can circle back if there's any questions.
All right. With the community events, there were 3 more functions added. The virtual Halloween parade in 2020 that was done. The Care and Share program through our Human Services Department, and the Cider Mill Road Race was also accomplished, as well as everything else that had taken place prior to that. So a significant amount of community events have taken place. Part of just with the harvest event, the Scarecrow contest this year, you're going to see a little bit of an added festival on the green along with the Scarecrow event, which will give the businesses an opportunity to be by their scarecrows to discuss their businesses, as well as which I was going to save for the manager report, but while I'm here, I might as well just share it with you. We're trying to make the green more accessible, and I know we have on a future agenda to try to get a joint meeting together to discuss sidewalks and things like that. In the meantime, with our discussion with the Persons with Disabilities Commission, a resident also came forward who happens to be on the commission, requesting some sort of access to the green. So what I came up with was to, in the interim, and it could be used in other areas, is a portable sidewalk. And it's called the grass mat, which allows the grass to grow through it, so we can still cut the grass, but it provides the accessibility for someone in a wheelchair or having the disability to get around. It provides that access to the green. We're making some adjustments for that particular festival to move the scarecrows back a little bit so that people in wheelchairs and with disabilities will be able to use that mat to access each one of them and at least enjoy the event. The good part of that sidewalk as well is that it is portable, and we can move it to other locations on the green. We can move it to other locations in town where it may be needed. There's a lot of positives with it. Now, it was a bit costly, but what I came up with was to fund it with donations. And so far, the overall cost of this mat was $12,000. And that's for the sidewalk, which goes the full length of this part of the green and there's a special staples that go in to hold it down. So far, we have raised $7,300, and it's with the generous donations. There's an anonymous donation in there that I can't really share who it is, but the generous donations of our businesses in town. I've been keeping a list of those businesses who have brought me in checks and sending out the thank you letters as well. And we will find, I'm hoping some way to publicly acknowledge them in the futures. But that's one of the things that I could say relates to this goal, as well as accessibility and other goals that you may have. So that was an accomplishment where, you know, we're at least doing something in that area, and trying not to have an impact on the town funds to do it. So going forward, that was one thing for later, so now I don't have to talk about it. With economic development, I have been meeting with the EDC and some developers in town that currently have properties and trying to move some of those forward. Our Planning and Zoning Commission is also trying to put some changes to regulations in place to make things a little bit easier for developers. There will be a public hearing next Monday on the village, town village area and the technology zone with some of those changes. But also I will be meeting again. I've met with the Economic Development Commission and talked to them about, you know, let's get some ideas to get some of these empty spots filled. Let's look at some of the vacant buildings. Let's look at some of the properties. Let's get a good inventory in place. Maybe bring some of these developers in town, bring some real estate people of interest that may be interested in our town, get them here, provide them with the regulations, the zones, everything relating to those buildings or areas, and try to give ideas of what can be done with them. I will be meeting with them at their next meeting to try to get their assistance in doing all of this, because certainly we don't have a lot of people in town on staff to be doing a lot of it. So that's one thing I've been doing. I went to Coventry, met with their town manager, their planner. We're hoping to bring their planner here to do a joint meeting. Another thing that we're also doing is there's a grant opportunity out there, a multi-town grant opportunity to do a economic development director. That could be a shared position between several towns, and take advantage of a grant that could hire this individual to help each town. We're looking into that right now. And that would be funded by a grant. So it would be maybe a temporary position. It could be something that all the towns decide that maybe in the future, it's something we'll want to fund. But at least in the meantime, this is one thing that we're looking at, to bring somebody in to help with some of these initiatives. So that's kind of, you know, bringing the 4-town plan forward, just a high, you know, in-depth level. I already talked about the master plan overlay zone, which is changing the regs. Number 2, regarding tourism, we've had a very active representative on the tourism district, really helping to promote Tolland and bring tourism into town. Certainly, there could be other things that we could talk about with that representative and the group, as to maybe creating a little more tourism district in our downtown. Something to think about, something to discuss. If we can, you know, once we develop businesses, maybe bring more tourism to some of our museums and things like that. They come to our museums, they eat at our restaurants, they visit our businesses. There could be a whole thing for the future, but it's still something
Mhm.
that could be in the future. The four-town initiative is still moving forward. We've been meeting with the Chamber of Commerce and sharing events, promoting events between towns, and moving forward into more of that four-town marketing process. Financial goals, I think the update was on the first bullet, which with the 5-year plan. I did address the whole 5-year plan. It's ongoing, will be changed in the next budget document, probably somewhere in between as well while we're doing the budget process. But that process has been completed. The first version of it is included in the current budget book. And it's a tool that we will constantly update as we have more information. So that has been completed. Looking at cost savings, we've tried to do a lot of joint purchasing. We've done joint purchasing with other towns on computers, things like that. We do joint initiatives with the town and the Board of Education when it comes to large items. Our grounds and field maintenance contract, there happens to be one thing that we're doing jointly together. The self-insurance consortium that we do with eChip, that has saved us millions of dollars, or at least $1 million. Electricity, fuel, oil, we do all of that as a joint process with our Board of Education. And we do use a consortium effort through CCM on our electricity to get the best deal on our rates. Regarding the quarterly financial reports, we revised that last year as well to give you more of year-to-year comparisons as to where we were the year before at the same time versus the year where we are now, to provide you with that updated information and to give you an extensive analysis of that information. So that was completed. Also added the new online budget book, which provided a lot more transparency to the town, provides a lot more information, a lot of tools for the public if they want to play with it a little bit. The information is there. We did a short video to try to give some education on how to use the book and the software. So that will be improving as we move forward. The capital budget section is our next part of it that we will be trying to implement in this next upcoming budget. It's just getting it online and functioning. Right now I have department heads doing it the old way, and then staff is going to have to train them how to use the new software moving forward. But in the meantime, we will work together to try to get the initial part built. Policies. Only thing that really changed under the plan of conservation is that the Tolland Planning and Zoning Commission adopted changes to its home occupation, small livestock regs in support of the 2019 Plan of Conservation and Development. And they're working, as I mentioned earlier, to adopt some additional changes regarding that master plan in the technology zone and the village area. Oh, another thing I'll be talking about later. Okay. Trying to collaborate with different boards and commissions. I think you've seen some additional ones recently with we're working on the historic district and persons with disabilities to do a joint meeting with the town council. That will be coming up in October. We're also looking at another joint meeting with the Board of Education. We're just trying to get some dates together to discuss the turf field as well as some of the COVID expenditures. And then we also have most recently the joint meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Town Council to collaborate on efforts on the cannabis law, which I have another thing. I've shared some information with you, but we'll chat about it later on during my report.
Veterans Commission too.
Veterans Commission as well. We'll make a note of that. We already talked about the joint meeting with the historic district that's coming up, and I already talked to you about the disabilities commission with the sidewalk. Public-private partnerships in addition to what we've worked together in the past. The fire department worked, the corporation actually received a grant to purchase 4 5-inch or 5-inch elbow connectors to reduce the stress on the 5-inch supply line when charged with water. So that assisted in that area.
You could add a couple more to that one too. The accessibility mats, that's a public-private, because you're getting donations from businesses for that.
Okay, I included that under the other one, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
And also Wanted Park, you know, with the thanks of John Crickmore,
I think
who
I
did a
put that
lot of
somewhere else.
volunteer work and then actually worked with the town to do the driveway and the parking lot. That's another public-private
Uh-huh.
partnership.
Okay, I'll make a note of that so we can update that. I also did mention the one at Park under the next
Yep.
bullet.
It covers both. Those two are public-private partnerships, so.
So, but also under the Sustainable Cities program, we were also very fortunate to get a matching grant for the one at Park. So it will be in both areas under your goals.
Yeah.
The update on the social media, the persons with disabilities just did a major web page. And a lot of work went in it. The commission did a lot of work, as well as our executive assistant, Megan Massa, did a phenomenal job with trying to
She
pull it
did.
all together and get it online. So that web page is up online. The Tolland Fire Department also does an excellent job with communicating with the public regarding emergency situations on social media. When we had that last storm, not only was I having staff on our end get it out on our social media, but John was having his staff communicate, you know, where trees were down, where roads were blocked up. A lot of that information. They also recently installed, which they got through another grant, right, for the LED sign.
That was public-private too, wasn't it? You guys got,
That's a lot of our donation monies.
yeah.
It could fall under.
But we
their
did
areas.
get, the other one that she's referring to, we did get a grant too
Mhm.
for a portable one.
Okay, that's the one I was
Yes,
thinking of, sorry. So that's for that information sign to display important information. So that's another way of us sharing besides what we do every which other way. The infrastructure, well, yay, the Birch Grove project is almost complete. The building is complete. There's some punch list items that are being taken care of. You know, they're still ordering certain furniture, things like that. The bills are still coming in for some of that. The school had the grand opening on September 18th. It was a wonderfully attended event. We had a lot of people there, and I think it was just well done. The PETA organization put together an excellent program. We had our legislatures there. Tammy spoke, as well as other legislatures and people from the state of Connecticut who supported the school and the grant process. We can't thank them enough, but that's been completed. The fire truck procurement specifications were completed. The contract has been awarded, and now it has to be built. And that's going to take some time. We're hoping sometime by the middle of 2022, we think, for your fire truck.
Already got it. No, yeah.
Did.
I was gonna say.
He is baloney. But anyway, it's moved forward. We've got that up and running, and we were able to do it with your gracious support of funding it with some cash as well as a reduced bonding amount. in that area. The next item regarding information, communications with residents readily available. We still get phone calls as well as web page reports. The turnaround is fairly quick in most cases. One of the things we did do was to, depending on the severity of the issue is how it's handled, but the Public Works also updated their website because there were times when citizens would call after hours or call on a weekend when the office is not staffed. We're trying to get the message out there that if there's a tree down or whatever the emergency may be, you can call and leave a message in Public Works or, put the information online, but if it's urgent, it's to call 911. And we're trying to get that message out there. We updated the website to share that so that they would know how to get a hold of Public Works. If Public Works needs to respond, or if it's the fire department or state trooper, whoever needs to respond to the situation, dispatch knows what to do with that. So we're trying to communicate that, you can call the office, leave a message, but you're not going to get a response. So we're getting that out there. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the last storm, which, I've been involved in major emergency situations before that have been even worse than that storm was mild compared to what I've had to deal with in the past, like Sandy, where I was right in the EOC with everybody else. But, I tried to enhance how I was communicating with the residents. I tried to give them some guidance on how to handle, what was happening with the emergency, so that at least they knew things were being done and nobody was just sitting around. Well, I'm sure they could see the emergency personnel out there, but in other cases, it still kept communication open with the residents. Excuse me. Also, when it came to the COVID masking situation, that was a pretty tough situation to have to make the decisions on. And, I still constantly am monitoring the levels of where our town is at. But what I did was, I put the mask mandate in place in any town building, any town office building, whatever we have that belongs to the town. Regarding the businesses, which was a tough decision for me because I was trying to take into account, some businesses were just getting back in business. Am I going to be limiting their business, causing them more harm? But the important thing was to get that message out there from what our professionals are telling us. Really, wearing a mask helps. And that's not everybody's opinion. And I understand that, and I can accept everyone has an opinion. But what I did do is I tried to reach out to our businesses, speaking directly with them. I provided them with signs that they could put up on their building if they didn't have it. Also communicated with all our businesses through email and did an e-blast as well. So I tried to get everybody that I could and tried to work, especially with the bigger businesses in town. Big Y currently is strongly urging masks. I go in there, I can see some people do, but a majority that when I've gone in have been wearing a mask. That's good to see in my opinion. So anyway, that was one way how I try to promote that communication. New committees that were added was the Town Mental Health and Substance Use Advisory Task Force was created and still has ongoing meetings. The last two, the Commission on Aging, Civic Engagement, it's a future goal. Currently, right now, the ability to try with the staffing levels that we have makes it very difficult, but it's a goal that's still out there. And although those commissions have not been created, I just want to say that there are various departments that we're trying to create townwide events to attract the citizens who will interact with each other at those events. You know, things like the scarecrow thing, the Celebrate Tolland. You have the farmer's market, you have the event, the arts and crafts show for the Art Society that was on the green last weekend. So there's still some events to try to draw people together in that respect. So I think that's all of it.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
All right, Brenda?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask a question and make a comment. First, Civic Engagement Commission it's not having events that the community, the citizens can attend. What civic engagement is having our community involved in municipal government, getting them involved in attending boards and commission meetings, feeling comfortable and encouraged to interact with our boards and commissions and with our town staff. So, you know, it's those items in red really don't apply to that commission. And my question is, you mentioned these are a future goal because of staffing levels. Can you please address what you mean by staffing levels? Are we understaffed? Do we not have enough personnel to be able to address these kinds of issues? And does that also mean that there's other things that we're short-staffed on? Is that what I'm reading in between the lines, that we are unable to address certain things in our town or certain goals because we do not have adequate staffing within our town?
Well, that certainly is part of the issue. And we have, for example, Commission on Aging, trying to set up something like that. The Human Services Department, where that would fall under, has so many things that they're dealing with right now. And adding one more commission at this time would be very difficult for them to manage, considering that department is carrying on a lot of things, not only things that are associated with their department, but they're doing things such as project management for the Birch Grove School and other major things, which we will hopefully be turning some of that around. So hopefully in the future, there may be some more time available. I think there needs to be more input from the staff once we start discussing that. But yes, many of our departments here at the town are run with minimal staff. We've eliminated a lot of positions over the years. We've also have added some. But one of the things I may be coming forward with is a discussion in the senior service area in the next budget. We really only have one person that works there, who is the director. If that person is sick, who do you have to cover it? And volunteers is not really the way to go. We do have a counselor who should be out in the field doing her job in some instances. You know, we've been fortunate at times that she's been able to be there, but if she's really doing what she should be doing, she should really be over in the human services area managing all that. So there's some things that need to be addressed before we can move forward with adding any more responsibilities to that department.
Okay.
I'm
So,
saying we're not doing it. I'm just saying there's things that have to be addressed.
yeah.
And the manager coming out in January will help alleviate some of that
If we get
stress
some-
because
Well,
the-
I disagree with that. I believe that what's going to happen is the person who's coming on in January is going to end up freeing up personal time from the person, you know, who's doing that job. The person's working more than 40 hours a week. And we're not going to see that we suddenly have more staff with more free time because we've added this position. The staff person is just going to have more personal time. So I'm also looking here, we don't have any recommendations from any of these new boards and commissions. If we're short-staffed right now and can't add more boards and commissions, how are we supposed to implement changes or programs that some of these boards and commissions feel that the town needs? I mean, we've created these commissions to help advise us and give recommendations. If we don't have the staff right now to even sit for 1 or 2 meetings a month for additional commissions, how are we going to have the staff to address the findings of things like the Mental Health and Substance Use Advisory Task Force and on the Commission of Substance Use, I'm sorry, and on the Commission of People with Disabilities?
Well, I think we have to wait till they actually come back with recommendations, but rather that we can't really.
Well, when are we going to ask for those? Because we only have 1 month left in our term.
Well, I think these commissions supersede even us. You know, if the Commission on, well, the Commission on Disabilities has been doing a lot. And they haven't come forward. They're still doing all of their research and such to decide where they're going to go and what direction, what they need help with. And same thing with the substance use and mental health. That one there, their meetings, they're supposed to be reviewing the resources, the things that we have right now. And after their review is complete, they bring forward to the council, regardless if it's us or another council, what their recommendations are. I don't want to rush them through their process just because we have an election coming up. So if that means it's a council past us, then it's a council past us.
Well, I still have the question to our town manager. When they do come with items, whether it's next month, 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, I don't see how we are going to have the staff to be able to respond to these if they can't, if right now we're short-staffed, basically.
Brenda, with the response to that, I think I really need to see what they will be bringing forward. Once I see what these commissions bring forward, the ones that are already in existence, then we look at our resources or to see if there's anything that the commission themselves can do to help alleviate some of the pressure. They may or may not be able to, and that may or may not be their charge. So that's one thing we would have to look and see what they're recommending. The person's Commission on People with Disabilities are already coming forward. They've been discussing various recommendations of what they want to do. I think they're going to be preparing a report to bring forward to council. Again, some of these things may require resources, and that's where I'll need the council's support. If that's what they would like to move forward with, what comes forward, then we look at, okay, what types of resources do we need to accomplish the recommendations that the town council as a whole decides what they want to do. So once you get your recommendations, the council says, yes, we'd like to do that, then we got to look at how are we going to do it? Does it take funding? Does it take people? Those are the things that have to be discussed, and then we go forward from there. Or we don't go forward if it can't happen, and that's where the council makes that decision. You give me the charge and I have to figure out how to make it happen.
I think we're naive to think that they're not going to come forward with some very good recommendations that are going to take investment to make our community, you know, more vibrant, more whole than it is right now. So that's definitely something that we need to take into consideration as we're moving forward.
I agree with you, Brenda, on that. I do expect good recommendations coming forward.
Okay, anybody else? See?
Just from a higher level, I know a majority of this was kind of handled under the past town manager, but despite the pandemic, do you feel that the goals that we laid out back in December 2019, is this too few, too many? Did we kind of have a Goldilocks level of goals, or?
Well, you certainly had quite a few.
Yeah.
Usually, you know, usually when you're setting goals, you're trying to, let's put it this way, in my career, we've set goals a little bit. we kind of go with a little bit higher accomplishment rather than saying we want to. I'm trying to think of something offhand here. We want to create a commission on just people with disabilities committee. That may be one objective, but the overall goal would be providing. I'm trying to think of people with special needs of the community that need to be addressed. And then you go from there and you set your objectives. And each year you may take baby steps into those. But it's more of a long-term strategic plan that you'd be doing. I think, this was very good with what you put together. And I think with what we have to work with, we've accomplished a lot over the last 2 years.
We definitely have.
A majority of your goals have been met in one way or another. And, certainly goals, usually a strategic plan will be more of a long-term thing. And each year you may say, okay, well, in order to meet that particular goal, we want to do X, 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 or X. I don't know if I'm being clear enough, but that's usually what you would do in that predicament. So these were very specific. And these were more, in my opinion, more of objectives rather than goals, because your goal should be a little more broader.
Right. We had short-term and
But
long-term.
but you did, yeah. So yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And then I was gonna add to it, I think it would be ideal to put, I think for that, one of the goals, noting the private public grant writer position, I think does serve as a goal
Yeah.
that, even though that's alleviating some time for free time for other staff, that it is a position that I think helps broaden the opportunities there. And then in regards to also civic engagement, one other thought that came to mind is throughout, we didn't want COVID to happen. But as a result, I think we have had increased participation in some levels through Zoom and through remote participation, which I think that policy was kind of an ongoing on and off discussion. So I
There's
think,
16 people on right now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had 16 people in here.
In
Oh,
the
well, I mean,
past-
because the Tolland Fire Department's on there, but.
Well, in the past, we had very few people attending our town council meetings, and I think, unfortunately with COVID and the implementation of new technology in Zoom, it has improved some of the communication with the public, and I would hope that we could continue with these hybrid type meetings that could give those the opportunity who can't get out
yeah,
to be able to participate.
I think that's one thing we've discussed in the past,
Mhm.
probably year and a half, 2 years, is that remote participation, I think at first was just for, well, not even just for safety, it was just for elected officials and wasn't remote participation for the public. So I think that'll have to be maybe a long-term goal, is redeveloping that policy to be all encompassing for members of the public and for appointed or elected officials.
I would agree with you though, Steve.
Yeah.
You brought up a very good point there, and that civic engagement has substantially increased with the use of Zoom and the hybrid meeting model. We've had meetings where we've had 50, 60 people on, and the Board of Ed has had meetings with 100 people on. So, planning and zoning has had some with some pretty large numbers too. Overall, I think we've seen civic engagement increase dramatically with the increase in the technology that we've had available.
Yeah,
So it's worthy of note.
yeah. That being said, I do think there are also other areas of improvement. I think there might be a way to streamline and make more engaging public hearing process. We have it, maybe creating some sort of quick survey or type of form, or if we get to the point of having a civic engagement commission or task force that can provide recommendations, if that's a future goal of a future council, that they can provide recommendations to improve citizen interaction in those public meetings, public hearings, and so forth, so that there's ideal response and engagement. So that's it for me for now. I think this was a really good high level thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to kind of go over it, get some deep dives and some assessments of it.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
You're
That
welcome.
gets us to 8.4, appointments to vacancies on municipal boards and commissions. Steve?
All right, Steve Jones, I would make a motion to approve the reappointment of Brenda Falusi to the Central Region Tourism District for a term of 9/28/2021 to 9/28/2024.
It's Kurt Schneider, I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? No, all those in favor? Kurt,
Aye.
Brenda?
Let me think. Aye.
If I were you, I would say no. Okay?
I don't know, would she
You
have
were
to
talking
recuse
about the
herself
plate
on
that
that?
runneth over, so, Steve,
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I am an aye on that, so thank you, Brenda, for continuing on in that role. I would like to actually publicly acknowledge that the people who are on the tourism district specifically requested that Brenda continue on with the role because she's doing such a good job with it. And Brenda, I appreciate you going forward and putting the best face forward for Tolland and also for tourism for the district as a whole. And the fact that you are requested, I think speaks very highly of the work that you're doing, and I'd like to thank you for doing that.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
If work can be fun, then that's the best that we can ask for.
Yeah, that's what the saying goes. Yeah, if you're enjoying what you do, you never work a day in your life.
I work an awful lot.
All right, then I would also make a motion to approve the appointment of Alfred Mancini to the Veterans Recognition Commission for a term of 9/28/21 to 9/14/24.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
I'm an aye also, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much for your service. And I'm glad to see the Veterans Commission is just filling up with people. I think that's excellent.
And that's an alternate position too, by the way, just to be clear that they're being
Yeah.
too. So that's helping fill positions that were expanded upon.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think they are full on their regular board members, so
Yeah.
now they only have one alternate position still open.
And
If
actually,
anybody's
sorry,
interested in that.
one other comment I did want to make is I actually did have a conversation with the chair at Celebrate Town, and I think they're looking as a future goal for themselves is many of they may have spoken to Councilor Luba as having an official council liaison to that commission. So that's something probably to keep in mind for either a future meeting or a future council is that they would like to have an official liaison to their group.
Yeah, send me a note on that, Will.
Yeah.
All right, that gets us to 9. There are no business, no old business items. 10 is the report of the interim town manager. And Lisa, I think we kind of stole most of your thunder.
I still have a few more things.
The only thing I had for one question before you start on that, for the portable sidewalks that you were talking about as part of your thing, and the fundraising that we're doing, the fact that we've been able to raise $7,300 in donations from businesses in town is amazing. And I believe you've done that without actually doing a public outreach. So have we thought about doing a public outreach to other businesses or to see if anybody else would like to contribute to that purchase?
I thought about it. I wanted to run it by town council to make sure that you were comfortable with it. It was kind of behind the scenes sort of thing happening. Yes, I would like to do that. And if you're in support of me, maybe communicating with the businesses in town or even the public, if you'd like me to do it through an e-blast, I'd love to be able to do that, but I just want to make sure that you're all comfortable with me doing something like that. I was trying to keep it somewhat low key,
Yeah.
but still meet
Well,
the needs.
It's a great opportunity, I think, for inclusivity in our town, especially with people with disabilities and that, and for the people who have donated and such. I would like to, like you said, I would like to recognize the work that's being done for the people who are reaching out, who are spreading the word and who are donating. I think, and this is again, it's a big win for our community. It just shows how much our community cares about having availability of resources in that. And it's also, this is all being accomplished through donations. So that to me is, it speaks volumes about the people who are donating and the people who are reaching out for that. So I'm for that. I think if we get to a point where you think that the donations have died off and you might not have a certain amount of left, then let's reach out publicly and just say, if anybody wants to donate, this is a great opportunity for the town to have this done. Now, my concern is around when we get it and when we get the scarecrows up, making sure that it's there and the accessibility is right from the get-go. So
We've already got it.
see, I knew I liked you, Lisa.
Like,
All right.
There was a short-term loan in place to cover not anything that the town's committed to or anything like that. It's like to a person.
Yeah.
To cover it until we could raise the rest of the money, but I wanted to try to get it in here. So I funded it with some contingency money, for
Perfect.
the difference there until we could get it reimbursed. And as the money comes in, it's reimbursing that account.
Perfect. All right, go ahead with the rest of your report.
Okay. Do you want the whole list of people doing hybrid in person and all that? You don't care? I mean, wait, I'm sure you
I
care.
wouldn't say that I don't
was
care.
not appropriate. I
Don't
mean,
say that.
I
Don't get
do
thrown all over the
apologize,
place.
please. That was
Yes.
not correct. You don't need me to.
I don't think we
publicly,
need
but
to
we
know,
have a
yes.
list if anyone
Right.
needs it,
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Very quickly, I had a booth set up at Celebrate Tolland. I don't think a town manager has done that.
I don't
in the
think it's
past.
ever been done. I noticed that and I was quite impressed.
I didn't
They
know you were
do it.
here. I didn't know you were there. I would have.
I wasn't, I was not at
Oh,
Celebrate
oh.
Talent because I had a
You had a
death in the
funeral, I
family.
thought.
I had a funeral to go to,
Okay.
yes.
But anyway, I did have a booth set up. I've met with many citizens, chatted with them. I put a little newsletter out with some information to share. Told people a little bit about myself as well as, so they know who to reach out to if there's a concern or a problem. So I'm trying to develop that citizen interaction so that they could feel comfortable to come to me with any questions or concerns. Also provided good information about different things in the town, like recycling and our police department. And I had the fire department, the CERT team right next to me. State troopers were right there with me as well when they weren't patrolling. So there's a lot of good interaction going on. But it was a very well-attended event. I think from all the years, this is probably one of the best attendance that we've had for that event. And certainly would be nice to see it bigger and better even in the future. But I gotta say that Bruce Watt and Kim Grimes, and please forgive me, there were other people. Tom from Public Works was involved, Kim Kowalshin was there, but there was another lady who was
Mary Pat.
Mary Pat Susi, and then another lady. I can't remember her name. I'm sorry, but I did publicly announce it when I went up on stage to open up the event. But thank you to everybody who did a phenomenal job of putting it all together. There was a lot of work there, and between CERT members and everybody who attended, it was very well attended, and I think it's such a success. I talked about the sidewalk. Cannabis. I sent you all out just a communication from our town attorney. Currently, it's something for the council or the planning and zoning, either commission or council can make the decision. But their advice is to try to put a moratorium in place until such time you can decide which way you want to go with the entire topic. But that was a recommendation that came forward. Certainly, if you want me to figure out which one of you want to do something, if you even want to do that, either commission or the council can do that. And it is a recommendation. So if you want it on an agenda, I can work to make that happen. Just send me some guidance on that.
I think we should. Let's talk about when we can get that on an agenda, and I'm assuming we're gonna need planning and zoning also.
Planning and zoning last night at their meeting was a little confused by that communication. They thought that we had already designated roles and responsibilities and didn't feel that we would be putting a moratorium in place. So I think a little bit more of an explanation needs to be given to them.
Okay. Well, certainly something with a joint effort to make that decision, I think would be helpful. So maybe another joint meeting or inviting them to
Yeah, we can talk about it. We'll figure it out.
whichever, just we'll speak and
Yep.
make it happen. Next thing that I just want to bring, because this is another big thing, the state provided some information regarding revenues of where we will be for this year. And things have changed from what was originally proposed in the budget. So there's about $445,000 in additional funds that may be coming forward. Now, under the municipal stabilization fund, that gives us the direction of what needs to happen with those funds. Basically, it would be anything over $100,000 would be considered to be moved under that ordinance. 75% of it would have to go to the stabilization fund, and the balance of 25% would go to the capital and non-recurring funds to be used through budgeting process for capital needs. Now, there was really only one grant that was in excess of $100,000 that would comply. We will not know for sure until we finish the year,
Right.
if there's other revenues that have major shortfalls, whether those funds will truly be available to be allocated to the stabilization fund. Right now, I don't see any major issues with our revenues. Tax collections are at 53% right now. So if we don't see any major loss in any other revenues, then the stabilization ordinance will kick in, and I can expect about $247,733 to go into the stabilization fund, and about $82,577 to go into the capital and non-recurring fund. That's for a total of a little over $330,000. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It has not officially occurred. We don't have the cash in our hand.
Right.
And as you know, in the past, things can change mid-year.
Yep.
So that's just where we're at right now. Just wanted to let you know that the joint Board of Ed and Town Council meeting, we're trying to work on dates for that. Walt is, where I left it was for Walt to reach out to the Board of Ed and give us new dates. Because it sounds like dates in October are just not, the ones that we proposed are just not working for them. So I asked them to get us dates that might work for them, and then I could reach out to you and see if all of you are available on any of those dates. So we could try to get this joint meeting together to discuss the turf field and the grounds contract and the COVID funds use.
It's a lot of people to try to get together, so thank you for continuing to
Well, I'm
work
working on it.
on that.
Let's see, there's two more things. Last thing, before last, has to do with the, some of the crime in town, and there's been some issues with car break-ins, possible home break-in. And I just want you to know that our state trooper has been working with various neighborhoods, trying to do the neighborhood watch programs. I think he's going to reach out to more. He's done some in-person discussions with some of the neighborhoods to try to talk about the safety and criminal trends that have been happening. And it's not just Tolland, it's happening all over. And, you know, in my particular town, they started this new Safe Streets, it's called. And, they're meeting with legislatures and all to discuss some of the issues, that some of it relates to youth, some of it is not youth. He did an open house to try to meet with people. He's doing the neighborhood meetings that he's done in the library. He's going to be offering a citizens academy soon to try to also help better prepare people and teach them about crime and operations. They're also trying to increase, you know, the patrolling within the town, doing overnight shifts, targeting some of the areas that have been impacted. And the other thing is, I'd like to encourage that if, God forbid, anybody does get hit with a break-in or whatever, if there's any sort of footage, camera footage, any sort of recorded documentation to please share that with our resident state trooper. Do file a report. That if somebody's been, looking in your windows and your camera picked it up, get that footage to him so that he can investigate it. One thing you don't want to do is start yelling out to somebody, hey, get out of here, because you never know if somebody's armed. So, pick up the phone, dial 911, call the state police, but never try to confront somebody. That's my own personal advice, because I've seen in my own time where people have been shot at and things like that. That did not happen here. It was another town. And finally, the other thing is lock your cars. Remove any items that are visible in your car that look like someone would want to smash and dash or break into it. Always make sure your home is secured. So those are important things I'm just trying to share, just to help alleviate. And then finally, and hopefully my reports will not be this long in the future. There's just been so much happening.
It's okay, it's all right, we'd rather be informed.
Last thing that we should probably talk about at some point, I was approached by Mr. Leibowitz. I think it's Mr. Leibowitz.
Yep.
For the Miracle Field. And certainly they were at Celebrate Tolland this weekend. They're looking at, trying to find a location. They picked Miracle. The organization is not just the Leibowitzes. It's a complete organization that researched different areas, and they picked Tolland. That's where they would like to come. So I think they'd like to, at some point, get on an agenda to discuss it further. Maybe there's more information that I need to bring forward in a report with them, with their planning, and but they'd like to get on an agenda, so we should probably talk about that. I know we told them we wanted to wait till Birch Grove was completed. It's almost completed. It's not done yet, but probably some direction from you where you'd like to maybe get it on an agenda.
Perfect.
We'll do that. All right, I'm done.
All right, that's fine, thank you very much, I appreciate that. That gets us to 11, adoption of minutes.
Steve Jones, I make a motion to adopt the minutes as laid out in 11.1 and 11.2.
That's Christian, I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor, Kurt,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
I'm an aye, that's unanimous, thank you very much. 12, correspondence to council.
Yes. First, this is a month's worth. It's still not a lot, but it's a month's worth because last time I unfortunately had to leave the meeting early because of a family emergency. And thank you to everybody who reached out to check in. I really appreciate it. Everything's fine now. So we received emails about the town manager recruitment process, about fluorinated water, about zero energy buildings, about the Scarecrow event, and some suggestions for the use of the ARPA fund. And that was it.
Thank you, Brenda. Gets us to 13, the chair's report. So one thing I wanted to mention to everybody today, people who are online and people who will read the minutes, is that the budget season has started. We have a schedule that is put out well ahead of time for people to follow and understand. The first thing that we always look at on the budget is the capital plan, which is our 5-year plan for infrastructure for the town. In December, the town council gets that, and we don't actually have the public hearing until February. But this entire process is starting now, and the calendar has been released. So if you want to increase your civic engagement even more and understand how the budget comes together, who is responsible for what and the dates, I encourage you to go and look for that. I wanted to remind citizens that bulky waste is next. The bulky waste pickup is next week, but you need to register this week. You need to register 4 days ahead of time of whatever your day is. You can do that by going to the Willie Waste website and just right in there, bulky waste. If you click that button, there's a Tolland only button, and you just fill out the form that you need them to come pick it up. They ask you if it's bulky or metal waste, and then they schedule you. Next Thursday is chair hour, if anybody would like to attend. And I wanted to thank everybody who was involved with Celebrate Tolland, as Lisa said. It looked like it was a very well-attended celebration for the town, and I appreciate all the work that goes into that. And I wanted to remind everybody to file an application to put a scarecrow on the town green. This event just started last year, and I'm super, super happy that we're doing it. It's a great way for people to go out and see things. Pick your theme, build your scarecrow, and put it on the ground, on the town green. And that is it from me. So that gets us to 14, communications and petitions from council persons.
Actually,
Steve?
Madam Chair, I have to make a quick point of order. Actually, we need to go back to item 11.2. Councilor Bodie actually pointed out to me right as you were going through your report that one of the votes for SGR has my name listed twice as both in favor and opposed. So that just needs to be, we need to actually go back and re-vote on that. I'd like that be amended to clarify that there was an opposition vote.
All right, so then I think you need to make a motion to modify the minutes that have just been accepted, and we can modify and then accept.
Yeah, so Steve Jones, I'd make a motion to modify the minutes to clarify the vote under item 8.1 for the September 14th hybrid regular meeting minutes.
Brenda Felucci, I'll second.
Any discussion? Kurt, Brenda,
Aye.
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Lisa, do you have what you need for that? Okay, we're good to go. We're good to move on. Anything else with that, Steve?
Yep,
You
all good.
good? All right, then petitions from council persons. Anybody have anything for me? Steve?
Now I'll go
Steve's
for
got his
that.
hand up.
So the one thing I think is in regards to the moratorium discussion too, I think we should also look to any towns that have established ordinances yet, and that might be,
You have that.
yeah, so getting any state guidance on that. That was it for me. I thought I had a second one, but I'll pass it along in case anyone else does.
Anybody else? All right,
I have something really quick. Is there any way we can share some online campaign or something about encouraging people to, lock up for public safety, become a partner with our resident state troopers by, ensuring that your car is locked, that your garage is locked, that your keys are not near your car, because some older models, the keys just need to be near the car in order for it to start, apparently, instead of, inside of them. Is there anything that we can, because that's no cost. I know there's a time commitment involved in that, but at least it's something that's really inexpensive. And have we, if we find out that what the resident state troopers are doing by having more patrols is something that is more beneficial, patrols at night for deterrent. Can we look at if that's successful and what we should do if that is successful in the future? Maybe, adding some more patrols so that we can ensure the safety of our residents and our property.
thank you, Brenda.
Can I just address that real quick?
Yeah, Lisa wants to address that one right now. Go ahead.
Well, regarding the information getting out to the public, the state troopers have been sharing on social media. I mean, we could do more, but they certainly have been sharing on social media, lock your cars, secure your valuables. I can try to work with Kevin to increase some of that, but he has been doing that.
Yeah. And I want to say thank you for pointing me to that Zoom program that was going on about the youth car thefts in the state. That was really, really informative data there. And for answering questions I had, Trooper Eklund has been, a wealth of knowledge and very valuable to the community. So thank you.
I did remember my second one.
Got
It was
another one.
actually, it was because I looked up and I saw Dogen, so I was thinking public safety, and I was curious if there's any updates. Doesn't mean now, but in a future meeting about the steep grant we got for the rec department to expand it so they get the public safety or additional storage space.
I'm sorry, what
The steep grant for the storage space at the rec center, I think part of that was going to use for public safety. I was just looking for an update, not now, but it could be a future meeting about how that's going, or unless Chief Lytle has.
Is that- You could go ahead.
So they just started work on it this week,
Okay,
and they just picked a plain color, but they just started working on it this week.
okay, great.
So hopefully progress.
And I think that came to mind partially because of the new mats. I was curious where those would end up being stored, if that is recreation or public works, that'll be kind of,
Public Works.
okay. All right, thank you.
Alright. That gets us to 15, public list of participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council, 3-minute limit, same rules apply, raise your hand on a device, *9 if you're on the phone. Anybody in the audience, just raise your hand, state your name and address for the record when I call on you. Going once? Going twice? All right,
All right, Steve Jones will make a motion to adjourn at 9:24 PM.
Kirk Turner will second that motion.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Good night.